Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. South Korean tax authorities are now looking into e-commerce giant Coupang, following the company's massive data breach, which affected millions of customers. Officials are focusing on possible profit shifting to Coupang's U.S. headquarters, which fully owns the company. Lawmakers clashed at the National Assembly as the opposition People Power Party launched a filibuster, while the ruling Democratic Party moved to pass a bill establishing a dedicated trial division for insurrection cases. U.S. President Donald Trump appointed a special envoy to Greenland, sparking a fresh row with Denmark and prompting concerns from the European Union. This comes as Trump has repeatedly argued that control of the island is essential for U.S. national and economic security. We begin this morning with South Korean e-commerce giant Coupang and an investigation into the company by the National Tax Service following a recent personal data breach at the end of November. Authorities are now examining possible tax evasion as lawmakers prepare another parliamentary hearing. Our Park Eun-ho starts us off.
National Tax Service officials left Coupang Fulfillment Services, Coupang's key logistics subsidiary, carrying boxes of documents before loading them into vehicles on Monday. The inspection followed the deployment of around 150 NTS investigators after preliminary data analysis suggested possible tax evasion. The team includes officials from Investigation Division 4, which handles special tax probes, as well as the International Transactions Division, focusing on possible profit shifting to Coupang's U.S. headquarters. Authorities are examining whether Coupang reduces domestic tax burden by excessive royalty or technology fee payments to its U.S. parent company. A two-day parliamentary hearing is set for December 30th and 31st, involving 5 standing committees, including the Science, ICT, Broadcasting and Communications Committee, to address issues including the recent data breach. The Land, Infrastructure and Transport Committee will also review whether Coupang's courier business registration could be revoked, depending on whether it meets Land Ministry standards. While political pressure continues to mount, it remains unclear whether Coupang Inc. Chairman Kim Bum-seok will attend the hearings. Lawmakers could consider strong measures, including additional legal complaints and the issuance of a compulsory attendance order if Kim fails to appear before the National Assembly, as was the case last week. And with no official statement from Coupang issued yet regarding the probe and hearings, attention is now focused on the company's next move. Park Eun-ho, Arirang News.
At the National Assembly, the opposition People Power Party has launched a filibuster as the ruling Democratic Party pushes to pass a bill that seeks to set up a special tribunal dedicated to insurrection charges. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
Tabled at last, the ruling Democratic Party introduced to the floor of the National Assembly on Monday a contentious bill to create a special tribunal for insurrection to deal with issues arising from the prosecution of former President Yoon Suk-yeol and his aides for their failed martial law bid. However, proceedings are stalled as the main opposition People Power Party has launched a filibuster to block its passage. The Democratic Party is adamant on passing the legislation to thoroughly punish those involved in the martial law declaration. They argue the current judicial leadership, specifically Supreme Court Chief Justice Cho Hee-dae, is biased, necessitating a special structure to ensure fair accountability. However, there were concerns over the bill's constitutionality when the idea was promulgated, but the DP claims that they have been resolved.
Discussing the future without clearing up the insurrection is like building a sandcastle. This revised bill removes unconstitutionality and danger. Above all, its strength lies in blocking the influence of Supreme Court Chief Justice Cho Hee-dae as much as possible.
Under the revised bill, dedicated panels will be established at the Seoul Central District Court and Seoul High Court. To ensure the Chief Justice cannot intervene, the revision empowers a meeting of judges at each court to determine the tribunal's composition rather than court leadership. The bill also includes a grandfather clause allowing the former president's ongoing trial to remain with his current bench for the first ruling. The People Power Party immediately began a filibuster, condemning the move as an anti-constitutional attempt to judge shop and seize control of the judiciary.
This is where impeachment motions passed 3 times and the lifting of martial law passed. But what is happening now? The Assembly is denying the very Constitution it created and is attempting to unilaterally pass unconstitutional bills.
The Democratic Party has already moved to terminate the filibuster, ensuring the debate concludes Tuesday morning. With the party's supermajority, the bill is effectively guaranteed to pass immediately thereafter. Enactment appears certain as well, with President Lee Jae-myung having already signaled his support for the special tribunal. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
North Korea has opened 5 new hotels near Mount Paektu as leader Kim Jong-un pushes to develop the area into a flagship tourist city. The regime's state-run Korean Central News Agency said on Tuesday that opening ceremonies were held over 2 days in the Samjiyon tourism district, with 2 hotels opening on December 20th and 3 more on December 21st. Kim attended the event in person, touring guest rooms, restaurants, and swimming pools, and praised the facilities for combining practicality, variety, and artistic design. He stressed that service quality and staff professionalism should be the top priority. Kim also vowed to further transform Samjiyon into a model city, representing the country's tourism culture. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has announced the appointment of Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry as the new special envoy to Greenland. Now, the latest move has renewed controversy over Washington's interest in the mineral-rich territory. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump has announced the appointment of Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry as the new U.S. Special Envoy to Greenland, reviving controversy over Washington's interest in the vast, mineral-rich Arctic territory. In a statement released Sunday, Trump said Landry understands how critical Greenland is to U.S. national security and will work to advance American interests for the safety and security of U.S. allies. Greenland is a semi-autonomous territory of Denmark, strategically located in the Arctic and rich in rare earth minerals. Trump has repeatedly argued that U.S. control over the island is necessary for national security reasons, both during his presidential transition and in the early months of his return to the White House. He has previously declined to rule out the use of military force to assert U.S. jurisdiction over Greenland, comments that have drawn sharp criticism from Denmark, Greenlandic leaders, and European officials. Following the announcement, Denmark's Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen on Monday said he would once again summon the U.S. Ambassador Kenneth Houry, citing renewed concern over Washington's intentions toward Greenland.
I am very upset about this appointment of a special envoy, and I am particularly upset about the envoy's statements, which we find completely unacceptable.
The appointment also prompted a response from the European Union, which reaffirmed its commitment to the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the Kingdom of Denmark, including Greenland. An EU spokesperson stressed that respect for national borders and sovereignty remains a fundamental principle of the European Union, signaling strong opposition to any challenge to Denmark's control over the Arctic territory.
It is not for me here to comment on U.S. decisions, but what I can say about the EU position is the following, which has been our long-standing position on the matter, that preserving the territorial integrity of the Kingdom of Denmark, its sovereignty, and the inviolability of its borders is essential for the European Union.
The latest developments underscore renewed diplomatic friction between Washington and its European allies as debate over Greenland's future once again moves to the center of international attention. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
U.S. and Ukrainian envoys recently held talks in Florida aimed at ending the war with Russia as part of the Trump administration's months-long push for peace. For more on where things stand, we're joined today by Dr. Ronald Sooney, Distinguished University Professor Emeritus of History at the University of Michigan. Dr. Sooney, thanks for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
So the United States and Ukraine called the meeting very productive, but were there any real breakthroughs? And what's your assessment of the meeting in Miami?
It's hard to tell, of course, because they don't give you much information. But I would be surprised if there's any breakthroughs. For a long time now, we've been at a stalemate. That is, the positions of Ukraine and the positions of Putin's Russia are so far apart that it's very difficult to imagine any immediate or short-term agreement. On the other hand, there's a lot of pressure from the Trump administration, and generally it's agreed that this administration is siding more with Russia than with Ukraine. So you have Ukraine caught in the middle, Europe backing even more forcefully than ever Ukraine, but the Trump administration trying to get something quickly, some settlement, perhaps to enhance Trump's reputation or possibility for a Nobel Peace Prize, and yet really just supporting and underscoring the positions of Putin's Russia.
Right, and also in Miami, the U.S. also held separate talks with a Russian envoy. Russia initially described the talks as constructive, but on Sunday suddenly dismissed reports of progress. Are the talks still far from reaching an agreement?
That's exactly the point, that it seems we're reading these signals, trying to interpret them, but in fact, it doesn't look like very much progress has been made. Putin's position is clear. He wants all of the Donbass, including those parts of that region that are not yet conquered by Russia. Ukraine wants an immediate ceasefire along the lines that would leave part of the Donbass in Ukrainian hands. That's one of the major issues. But there are others, even more important ones, like the nature of the security guarantees that will be given to Ukraine after a ceasefire and a negotiated settlement occurs. So this is a very difficult thing. I've been using the word tragic to describe the situation because Ukraine is being pressured by the most powerful nation in the world, the United States, to give in to Russia, which is a country, of course, that started the war, has committed war crimes, and is the aggressor in this particular conflict.
Right, and the war's been going on for 4 years, and Ukraine's on the verge of bankruptcy. European countries agreed to provide a massive interest-free loan to Ukraine, to meet its military and economic needs for the next 2 years. How significant is this plan for Ukraine?
It's significant in the sense that much of Europe, not all of Europe, but much of Europe has unified around support for Ukraine, and they've made mammoth efforts to try to secure the funding so that they can buy weapons from the United States. And the United States is essential here because their intelligence services and the weaponry that they can supply at some cost to Ukraine is key to the Ukraine's holding out. But it's time to face the bottom line, the real facts. Ukraine ultimately, sadly, cannot win this war. And Russia, sadly, will never give in and will not allow itself to lose the war. Therefore, the stalemate exists until finally people decide enough is enough, it's time to make peace.
Right, and so not much progress in Miami, but Putin said he's willing to speak with his French counterpart. So if talks between Putin and Macron takes place, could it help move things closer to ending this war?
That, I would say, is the one hopeful sign. Macron was a figure that tried early on when the conflict was heating up and right after the war started to make some kind of adjustment, some kind of agreement with Russia. Then there was a real falling out, and Macron came out strongly against Russia. And now it seems they've opened the door, at least, to talks. So maybe that is the one positive opening that's come out in the last few days. Let's hope so, because this situation, day by day, simply means more people dying, more destruction, largely in Ukraine, and a war that seems to have no happy ending.
Right, hopefully we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Dr. Sooni, thank you so much for your insight today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, thank you.
The weakening Korean won is adding a burden on consumers, especially when buying imported products like beef and coffee. Our Park Jun-an explains more.
The effects of the weakening Korean won are beginning to show in the costs of imports, as while year-on-year import prices fell by more than 2% on a contractual currency basis, they rose by over 2% when calculated in Korean won. According to the Bank of Korea Economic Statistics System on Sunday, the import price index for November shows that, with 2020 set as 100, import prices on a contractual currency basis rose by just over 18% as of November 2025. However, when those same price changes are converted into Korean won, the increase jumps to nearly 42%. This widening gap highlights how exchange rate movements add pressure to Korea's import costs. When looking at the $1 exchange rate, the amount of won needed to buy $1 now stands at around 1,481. That marks an increase of 7.63% over the past 6 months and a rise of 34.3% over the past 5 years. South Korea imports nearly 100% of key staples such as coffee, corn, wheat, and soybeans, making it vulnerable to currency fluctuations. Notably, the import price index for coffee stood at 379.71 in won terms last month, compared with 307.12 in dollar terms, underscoring how the weak won amplifies costs. Over the past 5 years, dollar-based coffee prices have tripled due to climate-driven supply shortages, but in won terms, they have nearly quadrupled, rising nearly 280% since 2020. Beef has also risen by over 60% in the same period, compared to an increase of around 30% on a contractual currency basis.
Even when buying the same amount, imports inevitably cost more when the exchange rate rises, pushing up import prices and ultimately fueling inflation. Compared with other G7 countries, South Korea is more sensitive to exchange rate swings and raw material price increases due to its heavy reliance on imports.
Meanwhile, the Bank of Korea's analysis shows that if the $1 rate persists around the 1,471 level, inflation could exceed its 2.1% forecast and rise to the mid-2% range. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
South Korea has unveiled its roadmap for human missions to Mars. Eyes are now on whether the country can move beyond the moon and set its sights on the red planet within the next 2 decades. Our Tae-Yoon reports.
The Korea Aerospace Administration has revealed its mid to long-term Mars exploration roadmap spanning 20 years through 2045. Rather than attempting a single, all-at-once mission to Mars, this roadmap focuses on gradually accumulating technology step-by-step from orbital insertion to landing and surface exploration using domestically developed capabilities. As an initial step, plans are underway to launch a Mars orbiter using the Nuri rocket and next-generation launch systems. In addition, technologies for exploring and utilizing resources on Mars will be developed, along with energy supply systems and the technologies needed to support crewed exploration and the establishment of habitation infrastructure.
At the end of last November, the first space transportation capability, developed in cooperation with the private sector, was secured.
However, since significant gaps still remain between Korea and leading countries in terms of technology, budget, and manpower, international cooperation is essential. Accordingly, the plan is to take part in international exploration projects in order to demonstrate domestic technologies at an early stage and contribute to global missions. Through these efforts, the goal is to secure a Mars orbiter by the mid-2030s and to complete landing and robotic exploration missions around 2045. Mars is rapidly emerging as a central arena in the competition for space leadership. Through KASA's Mars roadmap, South Korea aims to rise into the ranks of the world's top 5 space powers. 차윤경, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. The Trump administration on Monday suspended leases for 5 offshore wind projects under construction off the U.S. East Coast, citing national security risks. The Interior Department said the pause is effective immediately and will give it time to work with the Defense Department and other agencies on mitigating risks. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum warned that evolving adversary technologies and offshore turbines near population centers could create vulnerabilities. The pause comes 2 weeks after a federal judge struck down Trump's executive order blocking wind development as unlawful. In Moscow, a bomb planted under a car has killed Russian Lieutenant General Fanil Sarvarov. Russia's investigative committee said that an explosive device detonated underneath his car on Monday morning, and it is pursuing multiple lines of inquiry, including possible orchestration by Ukrainian intelligence services. Sarvarov served as the head of the General Staff's Operational Training Directorate and was a veteran of campaigns in Chechnya and Syria. He is the third high-ranking military officer to be killed in a bombing in the Moscow region in just over a year. While Ukraine has not commented on this specific attack, President Zelensky previously noted that, quote, justice inevitably comes for top Russian figures. In Japan, a regional vote on Monday cleared the final hurdle for Japan to restart the world's largest nuclear power plant. Niigata Prefecture's decision allows operator TEPCO to reactivate the first of 7 reactors at the Kashiwazaki-Kariwa power plant as early as January 20th. The historic pivot back to nuclear energy comes nearly 15 years after the Fukushima disaster. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi is pushing the restart to slash soaring fossil fuel import costs and meet the massive electricity demands of new AI data centers. Hundreds of protesters gathered in the cold to protest the decision. British singer-songwriter Chris Rea, best known for Driving Home for Christmas, has died aged 74. A family statement said he died in hospital on Monday after a short illness. The singer rose to fame in the 1980s and had 2 #1 albums in the UK. His 1986 classic Driving Home for Christmas remains one of the most played festive tracks, consistently returning to the UK music charts every December.
We're getting a brief pause from the cold today. That said, you'll want to keep an umbrella handy. Rain started in the west will spread nationwide through the afternoon with 5 to 20 millimeters in the forecast through Wednesday morning. Meanwhile, mountainous regions in Gangwon-do province will see snow instead with up to 5 centimeters of snowfall. Once the rain clears, winter makes a sharp comeback. From Christmas Day, temperatures drop quickly, and by Friday, we are looking at lows near minus 12 degrees Celsius here in the capital, but it's going to feel like minus 20 degrees along with the biting winds. But for this afternoon, despite the rain, temperatures will remain comfortable. Seoul gets up to 5 degrees, but Busan will be topping out at 15 degrees Celsius. Christmas Day itself looks mostly clear nationwide, but snow or rain may linger along the west coast of Jeollado and on Jeju Island. But for today, enjoy the milder temperatures along with rainfall.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.